I'm Steve, and this is This Week with Cars. Ever since I was a kid, I've loved TVRs. I have all three of my TVRs here. This is a 1969 Vixen S2, a 1972 Vixen 2500, and a 1972 TVR 2500M. So what is a TVR? Well, to start with, the name TVR is made from the spelling of Trevor, which is the first name of the guy who founded TVR, Trevor Wilkinson. Mr. Wilkinson grew up in Blackpool, England, which is where he started up his car factory. At one time, TVR was the third largest manufacturer of specialty sports cars. The two Vixens I have pictured here are pretty rare cars. There was only 151 of these Vixen S2s built, and only 78 of the Vixen 2500s. This is a very late Vixen. It's built in the same year that 2500M was built. And that means that this also has a shared chassis. Partly through the production, they started to put a more modernized chassis under the Vixen, the same chassis that was used in the 2500M. TVR used engines from a lot of different manufacturers. Engines from companies like MG and Triumph, but most commonly they used engines from Ford. TVRs have also come with 4 cylinders, 6 cylinders, or even 8 cylinders. In the early 60s, an American company called Griffith was taking TVRs that looked similar to this and was putting small block Ford V8s in them and calling them the Griffith. The TVR Griffith is the car that first introduced me to TVRs and what had started my passion for them since I was a little kid. Let's take a closer look at these cars. Underneath the bonnet of my Vixen S2 sits an overhead cam 4-cylinder Ford engine. You can see I have a downdraft Weber carburetor there. In America, this would be referred to as the Pinto engine. There's a lot of room around the engine. It's very easy to get to everything, very easy to work on everything. These are very simple, light, very neat cars. Here's the interior. You can see a full array of Smith's gauges there. Looking inside, you can see this car has been fully restored. Moving on to the Vixen 2500. Underneath the bonnet sits the same inline 6 as a Triumph TR6 uses. This car has been fitted with 2 side draft Webers. Still, with the bigger engine, it's got quite a bit of room around the engine. Still pretty easy to work on. This car is unrestored. I've only updated the things that I've needed to make it drivable. This car is fitted with a folding sunroof, which is very nice on hot days. The interior of the car is very original and unrestored. On these Vixens, the spare tire is just set on the rear shelf. On the S2, I have a tire cover over it. And then moving on to the 2500M. This car also has the straight 6 out of a Triumph TR6. This one has triple Webers. You can see that the spare tires now moved up to the front on these cars. The packaging of this engine is much tighter than the other two. Even though the 2500M doesn't carry the Vixen name, and there are slight design changes to the bodywork, it is still very similar to the earlier cars. As I mentioned before, the green Vixen 2500 shares the same chassis as this 2500M. And things such as the door and the rear window look very similar, if not the same. The 2500M has more of a pronounced rear end. This early 2500M still uses the Cortina lights like the earlier models. On the inside, you'll see it is pretty much unchanged since the Vixen in here as well. The rocker switches are still the same, and it still has a full set of Smith's gauges. You now, however, get more room behind the seats as the spare tire is not back there. I'm going to first take the TVR S2 for a drive. Here in America, you may get teased for having a Pinto engine in your car. But in a car this lightweight, this engine is no slouch. And in this configuration, it sounds great. Vixen S2s are much faster than MGB or Sunbeam Alpine. These cars are very lightweight and feature very advanced suspensions for their age. These are four-wheel independent suspension, and these cars have dual shocks on each side in the rear. One benefit to having the four-cylinder engine, especially without the sunroof, is that it doesn't get too hot in the car. Once you move up to a six-cylinder, and especially with the V8, the cars can get quite hot inside. Now in the Vixen 2500, I have the benefit of having a sunroof to keep it cooled down a little bit in here with the bigger engine. It's probably awfully hot. Power from the Triumph six-cylinder is noticeable immediately. This car doesn't even have the triple Webers, and it just feels like it wants to go faster than the speed limit is going to allow. There also isn't a whole lot of legroom for taller drivers. So if you have longer legs, you may want to consider a Marcos over a TVR. I'm here now in the 2500M. This 2500M is a real beast with these triple Webers. One thing that TVR has been known for since the 60s is that the cars want to try to kill you all the time, especially the more powerful versions. These cars have very short wheelbases, and when you pump a lot of power to them, they can be quite twitchy in the corners. The V8 TVRs were even formidable to the Cobras on the racetrack.